Hi everyone, it's Karnak. Thanks for joining me at Star Wars Armada Explained. We're going to be looking at a new weapons team for the Empire, Gunnery Chief Varnillian. I believe I'm saying that right. As we know, Star Wars names are hard. So Gunnery Chief Varnillian is a weapons team for the Empire. How do you can see that? Bottom left-hand corner of the card, you'll see it's the weapons team icon, dictates where the card equips to. Opposite, next to the point cost, you'll see that Gunnery Chief Varnillian is Empire specific. Point cost of 6 points. And Gunnery Chief Varnillian, you'll see a dot or bullet point in front of the name, signifies it is unique. You can only have one of this card in your fleet. There's a lot of text, and before we dive in, this is something that is kind of an inside joke for the Discord community, is we often don't call Gunnery Chief Varnillian Gunnery Chief Varnillian. We just call her Sabrina. And because if you look at the picture, you see she's kind of like that smug little look and pointing and the hairstyle. And why do we call her Sabrina? Well, if you've watched Netflix, The New Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, she just kind of looks like Sabrina from from the. I don't know if if OBS can capture the picture of my big freaking face in the way, but I'll move it real quick. It just looks like, I mean, just look the pic. It just, I don't know. To me, to a lot of us, it just looks like that is the case. So yeah, I just thought I would point it out. Anyway, get back on track. So let's read the card text. So after you deploy, place one red die set to a blank face on this card. If you are the second player, set it to any face instead. While attacking a ship, you may spend one die from the attack pool to exchange it with the die on this card. Both die remain set to their current faces. So there's two timing parts to this card. The first paragraph essentially takes place after a ship is done deploying, which I'll touch on here in a second what that means. And then the second part is while you're attacking. So let's cover the first part of the paragraph. So when do you place a die on this card? It's after a ship deploys. And a lot of people make the mistake, I know I do, is that they'll set the die after deployment. Because 90% of the time when you think of after you deploy, you're thinking, oh, after deployment, take care of the stuff. No, the timing of this card is specifically after you deploy. Meaning, as soon as you set the ship down on the table, and you've set its speed, and you let go, and you say, okay, now it's traveling speed. Let's say it's traveling speed 2, and you're done. That is then when you say, oh, now I need to use this card, and I need to set a die on that card. Why does that matter, you may ask? Well, if you're playing objectives, like when a ship comes out of hyperspace, like for example, if you're playing Hyperspace Assault, or another kind of interesting interaction I'll get into in a little bit, is again, it's not wanting to punish you for equipping this card and then not being able to use it on ships that could be in hyperspace, like a Demolisher or a Raider or a Victory, some medium or small ship, or again, some other kind of interaction that could happen with deploying a ship from hyperspace for the Imperials. But again, so by and large, though, it's one of those timing windows that if somebody really, really wanted to nitpick you, if it's after deployment or start of the ship phase around 1 and you forgot to set your die, you're tough luck, man. You missed your timing window. Although most people are going to shrug their shoulders, say, hey, fly casual, I'll give it to you this one time or something to that effect. Again, sometimes with so much going on, just, don't really just drill people or screw people out of a card. Some people are going to be like that anyway. But, anyway, I spent too much time on that. So that is the timing window of when you are able to set the die. Now, if you're first player, this red die has to be set to a blank facing. I'm going to spawn a red die on here. Red facing. Boom. But if you're the second player, you can turn that die to any facing that you want. Something helpful like a double hit or maybe an accuracy. So this card is just really good if you're first or second player. You might think, oh, first player, I get a blank on my red die. It doesn't seem very good. Well, this gets into the second part of the card, which is while attacking a ship, you may spend one die from the attack pool to exchange it with the die on this card, and both die remain set at their current faces. I do want to specify is you can only use this in anti-ship attacks. You can't use it against squadrons. I think it'd be really strong if you could, but also kind of like interesting. So in this example here, we're going to say that this onager has, like veteran gunners whooped, veteran gunners equipped, and maybe some other upgrade cards. And it wants to shoot at this Corvette here. Now we see here that the onager has placed its ignition token at long range because it has like the red particle beam cannons, whatever it's called. We just call them red or blue because there's a red card and a blue card. It's got the red card equipped. So it's got the one where it can place a token at long range when this token is at medium range of the Corvette. We're going to say it's a test bed version that throws the 4 red die. So make sure I didn't cover up my window here with OBS. I got to do a little adjusting with this window. There we go. Alright, so you draw a line of sight. We've got line of sight. It's at extreme range, so the evades can cancel up to 2 die. And we're at, if we had blue die in the ignition battery, which this version does not, you'd be able to use it there. So again, 4 red die. Here we go. Boom. We're going to say in this example, the onager is second player. Alright, so now, in this example, let's say that when you had set your Sabrina die, you had set it to an accuracy. And then you roll something like this, we're like, oh man, that's so great, but I didn't get any accuracies. Maybe I can't lock, maybe if a ship has a single evade token or a redirect. In this case, the Corellian Corvette has two evades. So at extreme range, you'll be able to cancel 2 die. It's going to be able to take off, the double hit and some of this other stuff. So what you can do is you could swap out the one of the hits, for example. You could set that to an accuracy, and then you set this to a hit. There you go. And now you can accuracy, for example, the redirect, which I don't think that's going to be very good. So I'm going to use a different. I'm going to use this example again. Try to see maybe if we can get some more blank die here. Okay, we roll the 4 red die. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. All right. So now in this situation, it's like, oh, I got a blank. I would like to try to get something better. I've got veteran gunners. So I'm going to go ahead and use veteran gunners. I'm going to re-roll all the dice here. Boom, 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 and boom. Nope, I didn't get any better result. But you know what? I can swap out this accuracy for this blank. There we go. And now at least you're doing something with all the die in your dice pool rather than nothing. So it's still the 1 damage, but again, giving you guys examples of where this can be good. And I'm using it here specifically with red dice, but you could use it, for example, in situations like, I've even had a case of putting her on Demolisher, and then if you've got somebody that can generate, like Darth Vader to make rerolls or Screed, it's just really good insurance, because if you did, for example, roll 4 double damages or some hit crits on black and it's just overkill, like for example if we were at close range and shooting and we're throwing the 3 black die, maybe this was a hit crit, something like that, like that's instantly going to kill that little Corvette. And if you're going to overkill, well, why don't you just switch out that blank for a black hit crit, because it's any die, it doesn't have to stay red. I want to point this out. So what you do is you pick this up, you turn it into a black die, turn it into hit crit, cancel it out of here, we add another red die, set that to the blank. Perfect. So it's just good for ensuring that if you're dealing too much damage, you can pluck some of that out and save it for when you really need it. Or if you just really need it, you can chuck it in there and take out like a red hit or something like that. Again, just showing some examples of how this card is beneficial and where it's useful at. Or maybe you just roll a really crappy attack and maybe one of the dice is a double hit or a hit crit, but it's going to get canceled by like an evade or just otherwise not really going to do anything. Save it. Pull that die out, chuck another die in that's not very good, and again, save it for another situation. What's also great about this card is that it does work with salvo, because again, you're not adding you're not technically adding die to the attack pool. You're exchanging it, as it says here. You're removing a die, you're swapping it out, you're exchanging it, and putting it into the attack pool. So it's technically not an add because it says exchange. So again, want to make sure I'm being crystal clear on that. With salvo, this card does work with salvo. Okay. What other things with Gunnery Chief Varnillian am I missing other than the one interaction to get into? Again, the thing I want to touch on is the deploying part. Now, this is a situation where it's like, oh, that's kind of really neat, but how useful is it really? Kind of a deal. So let's go ahead. I'm going to pull off some of these individual die pieces because I'm going to need it for my example. All right. But I think you guys kind of get the grasp and concept of the Gunnery Chief. Again, you can only ever use the card once per ship attack. You can't use it multiple times over and over. But it's got a lot of uses, and I think that you're really going to see it. You see it a lot on Honor Goes already. I kind of have found an interesting use on it with a Gladiator or Archidins. Lots of different uses. But this one specifically I want to talk about if Gunnery Chief is on a Raider. I accidentally deleted the card I needed. And this was something I was just like, wait a minute. What about the wording of this card where it says after you deploy? Well, what can deploy twice in this game? And you might be scratching your head like, I don't know of any ship that can deploy twice. Corvus technically can deploy twice. Some of you guys might be thinking already about where I'm going with this. So Corvus, if you put Corvus down, after you deploy up, I put it down, it's going at speed 2, okay. And then you got Sabrina, and you're like, oh, I'm first player, so I put a blank red die on there, perfect, okay. But then you get to the after deployment phase, and you can redeploy Corvus. And so when you redeploy Corvus, you're physically picking it up off the board, and then you're deploying it again back on the board. Well, as the card says, after you deploy, place one red die set to the blank face on this card. So in this very rare and unique situation, you can put 2 blank red die on the Gunnery Chief because that is the resolving of the trigger of the card is after you deploy. So Corvus can give you 2 red die if your first player both set the blank, or if your second player 2 die set to any combination of you want. But again, you still have the restriction of you can only ever swap out 1 die. But it kind of is interesting, again, as I discussed before, to kind of just swap out what you need in the moment that you need it. Is it going to ever be a game-changing, breaking thing? No, absolutely not, because you're giving up your weapons team slot for it. So again, you need to take Vader, or you need to take Screed. You need to find a way to generate rerolls for this poor little Raider. And it's just, it's like I said, it's unique, it's interesting. I just kind of wanted to point this out to you guys. All right, there's nothing else going on with Sabrina. Again, I think it's a great card. I love it as the Empire. I like these just little different interactions we can come across. But if you think that I've missed anything, or if you have any questions, or if you're confused about something, please be sure to post a comment. Let me know. You guys are fantastic, and I'll catch you all later.